So I live in supported housing. This basically means that I have a room inside of a house that I share with others who have learning disabilities. When my best friend moved in, this one particular tenant who we soon started to call Creeper, full-on stalked her. He would lurk outside her room late at night, waiting for her to come out. If she didn't come out, he would be outside and knock on her window. He would watch her come out of the shared bathroom from the top of the stairs. He's tried to kiss her, and one time he touched her on the shoulder and then said that he was looking after her whenever a support worker asked what he was doing. He's also waited on the stairs when her and I came back from a trip out like 11:30 at night. Needless to say, we waited around the side of the building until he finally went away. He's also watched her through his blinds, and he's been warned at least 3 times by support workers to leave her alone. Now, here's the worst part of it all. He's 45 and she's 22, and he has a girlfriend who he's been with for at least 10 years. But I guess he doesn't really like her very much, judging by the frustrating phone calls that he always has with her on the daily. Now, he's also displayed a milder form of this behavior whenever I moved in, but he started leaving me alone within a few months. But the difference with my friend is that he's totally infatuated with her. So not only is he emotionally and physically trying to cheat on his girlfriend who he doesn't even seem to like, but he's been doing it ever since my friend moved in, which was pretty much at the beginning of the year. He needs to be charged with harassment, and his girlfriend totally needs to dump him. He needs to be thrown out of the house too. If it weren't for whatever he has, he'd probably be in prison. I really wanted to share this because I'm done with him. I wanted him to leave my friend alone. I want him out of the house, but the staff aren't doing anything about it, so I'm going to take matters into my own hands. But at the same time, I just don't really know how to handle it. Hopefully I'll figure something out soon. I noticed a lot of crazy roommate stories, so I thought that I would share my own. This happened during the summer of 2018. I had just finalized a divorce and moved back to my hometown. My parents had let me stay at their place until I was able to find my own. I had just started a really nice high-paying job, but I was in so much debt from the divorce that I wasn't ready to pay for my place of my own quite yet. I didn't want to mooch off my parents, so I decided to find a roommate for the time being. I found a really sweet woman, Raquel, about 15 years older than me, who wanted someone to move in for only about 3 months. This was perfect for me since I was still paying off debt. Everything about Raquel was such a delight. She was sweet, clean, cared about the environment, volunteered, and would always cook food for me just because. I thought that I'd hit the jackpot with her. However, there were a few things about Raquel that were a little off. She wouldn't tell me what she did for a living, and she would always tell me that it was just confidential. Whatever her job is, it always caused her to be gone for days, sometimes weeks at a time. I thought that maybe she worked for the government because she had a framed photo of her with Bush Jr. in the Oval Office. Whenever I asked her about it, she just said, "That was my last day before leaving the Secret Service." Even though this was odd, I was very impressed. She had this very strict rule in particular. Every single door in the house, including my room, had to be open at all times if it wasn't being occupied. However, this rule didn't apply to her own room. Her door was to be remain closed at all times whether she was there or not. And obviously I was never allowed to go in. Odd, but not too concerning. She also claimed to be wicked. I don't know much about the practice, but she was really into it. She was constantly going to a nearby wicked store and buying all of the books and garnishes. Besides these few things, she was a very normal person. About a month went by without any kind of concern. I should quickly mention that she had 2 cats. They would mostly stay in her room, but whenever they wanted out, they would hit the door with their paws. My room was right next to hers, so the sound of it would always drive me nuts. If she wasn't home and I heard the cats trying to get out, I would always open her door just enough so they could run out. I know this is breaking the rules, but it absolutely drove me nuts. Everything got a little too weird one night when she said that she was out of town for work. It was the first night of her being gone. I was sitting in my room watching TV when I started to hear what sounded like the cats hitting her door and trying to get out. I thought, great, she forgot to let the cats out before leaving. I opened my door to let them out of a room when something made me stop dead in my tracks. The cats were just chilling in the hallway. They weren't in the room, but I know that I heard something. Already pretty creeped out about this, I decided to open her door and give a little peek inside. What I then saw were about 4 people, naked, holding hands in a circle, with all of their heads bowed as if they were praying. I noped the heck out of there so fast and headed straight to my parents. I tried calling Raquel, but I couldn't get to her. Right when I was about to call the police, she finally called me, and she was livid. She said that I broke her only rule and that she wanted me out of the house immediately. Fine by me. The really eerie part was when I got my bed and dresser back, there was a weird symbol carved into the wood that wasn't there before. The only way that I can really describe it is that it was kind of like a plus sign, but instead of straight lines, they were curved. Like if someone cut an oval in half down the middle, then tried to make a plus. I'm not sure what it's supposed to mean, and I don't think I want to know. This happened in 2009 and landed me in no end of trouble in my anime community. I moved into an apartment with a good friend of mine. Absolutely worst mistake. The guy was popular and pretty much loved, while I just wanted to run panels at a local convention and just enjoy myself. So far, I was doing pretty fine, having a job Monday to Saturday at my college bookstore and also trying to get through senior year of college. I was doing pretty fine until around February. That was when my roommate, that I might as well dub him Housecat, lost his job. I lost mine soon after and I had to drop out to find a new one. Basically for this, I was made to float him. He basically started to become very negative and lashed out at a good friend of mine. It freaked us all out and I went to stay with a friend. I had 2 interviews, one with a local temp agency and the other was at a library. I took the temp job right away, but it was not fast enough. Housecat made living at the apartment an absolute nightmare. Eventually I had to get the co-signer, which was my dad, involved in all of this, and he and I evicted Housecat. I was really nervous for months because after this happened, I jumped at shadows because Housecat became really angry at me, and also at my sister and really my family in general. His ex-girlfriend was also no help either because apparently they blamed me for everything that happened. This had some repercussions to me. I was actually blacklisted from a lot of parties, which was fine. I lost a lot of good friends because of this and still barely have any of them to trust. I also really hate being home by myself. While he was living with me, the friend that he lashed out at, he actually knocked her to the floor and was holding her down. I was in the bathroom trying to cool off and then ran out when I heard a scream. I grabbed my phone and charger while my friend's dad came to come get us. We had just returned from a friend's graduation party. I was really stunned and scared of Housecat. Also, what made my situation really worse was that I have several allergies to certain foods, which also can be found in beer. I absolutely can't have it. I was really terrified because the Housecat flaunted this in front of his hands, which made me stay in the room most nights. One of his friend's girlfriends decided to sneak some soda into my room, which we downed while playing my PS1 and Nintendo 64. The day that he was evicted, I was training at my temp job and I wasn't home at the time. He called via his father's phone to demand that I come back to the apartment. When I got back to the apartment, the bed, his computer, and stereo were all gone. My roommates arrived afterward and I was really relieved. Hopefully I don't run into Housecats ever again. And as for the Colorado anime community, thanks for nothing. He really needed help and you clearly value popularity over mental health. I'm really glad that I'll never be part of that again. I do still like anime though. Obligatory happening college to start. During my sophomore year, I lived in the dorms and I was assigned to a random roommate. He seemed a little bit introverted but fairly normal at first, but he really wouldn't talk to me. I would try to start conversations about things that he showed interest in, but he would only give me one-word responses that were obviously meant to end the conversation. I figured that he probably just didn't like me, so I decided I would give him some space and just leave him alone. After a few days, it started. I would notice that he was always looking in my direction. I chalked it up to coincidence, but it just kept happening. Classes started up and I decided to spend less and less time in the room, but whenever I was there, he would always be constantly looking in my direction. When I would turn to face him, he would turn his head away, but it would always creep me out since it was pretty much constant. I also started to notice that he would lay on his bed to read, but he would hold the book or papers at an angle that always gave him a direct line of sight to me. About a week or so into the semester, my girlfriend at the time and I went on a morning hike and then crashed on my bed at around 2 p.m. We woke up to him just standing there and staring at us about 2 hours later. He didn't say anything, just turned and then exited out of the room. At that point, I decided I needed to leave before he killed me in my sleep and ate my face, and I was out of there pretty quickly. Fortunately, I didn't see him again for quite a while, but we ended up having a class together senior year. I had been telling my friends the story ever since it happened and they didn't believe me. One of my friends had really poor vision, so we sat in the front row. Of course, every time I looked behind me, my old roommate was always staring directly at me. Not the teacher, but at me. It didn't matter if we were on the middle or one of the sides. I challenged all of my friends to look back during a single time during the semester and try and catch him not looking at me. Within about 5 classes, they all gave up and they agreed that he was staring at me nonstop and that it was super creepy. My parents think that he was in love with me, but I still think he just wanted to eat my face. I guess I'll never really know though. Either way, dude was a major creep. So about 4 months back, I received a message from a guy who was interested in being roommates. He said that his name was M and he seemed super nice. We talked for about an hour and I told him that I would let him know the situation. I did inform him that I was no longer interested and I found another place. He responded that he would still like to be friends, and that's when I had a really strange gut feeling. It was a very bad gut feeling about this guy. I told him that I really apologized if I gave the wrong signal, but I really wasn't interested at all, like period. He texted me about a week later asking how I'm doing. I never responded. I then deleted his number and forgot about the whole thing. That is, until today, months later. I got a text from who I thought was a coworker. This friend had just changed her phone number. The text was asking how I was doing, and I said I was doing really good. They then went on to ask if I wanted to hang out and meet, and I said sure, but where? I genuinely thought that it was my friend. I kid you not, the phone numbers are off at the end by 1 digit. Suddenly on my way there, I then realized that I had no idea who this person was. I called them to see, and my heart absolutely dropped when I then recognized the dude's voice. I apologized and I told him that I actually thought he was someone else, my coworker. He completely lost his crap and totally freaked out on me, really angry. I apologized and I told him to please never contact me ever again, as I was not interested and I would definitely not be meeting him. He was really angry and I wished him a good day, then hung up. It was pretty wild. There are 3 people I'm going to refer to in this story. The roommate in question is Danny, his girlfriend is Veronica. They live with my partner Julia in Colorado in a 2-bedroom apartment. I also just want to add that my partner and I both are non-binary. We have a long-distance relationship and I try and fly out there as often as I can afford. Julia will be moving out of this apartment in January and has already found a new roommate. I found out this information late September during my last visit to Colorado. It makes me very uncomfortable to talk about, but I would like to write it down as a way to process it and try and get some input. Veronica is young, 19, and I believe Danny is also 19. Veronica approached me for advice for her relationship with Danny because she learned that I was 27. We sit outside on the patio of earshot of Danny, and she tells me about her insecurities in her relationship. Normal things. Am I attracted enough to him? Is he cheating on me? And so on. The whole time I'm just like, you're beautiful, don't compare yourself to others. If he's cheating on you, you need to dump him. Veronica then tells me she goes through Danny's phone all the time. She's very paranoid and she believes that he's cheating. This girl goes on to tell me some really messed up crap and that she's unearthed things on Danny's phone that make my skin crawl. Apparently Danny takes videos and pictures of random women in public. There's a video that Veronica found and actually confronted him with it. In the video, he zooms in on women's chests who's standing out at a train station. Danny, trying to defend himself, says, "Oh no, that's just Julia. They asked me to take a picture of them. Pretty weird, right?" This was before Veronica had met my partner, and that's how she caught Danny in his lie. The person in the recording was definitely not Julia. Even more paranoid, she decided to dig a little bit deeper. She found some more inappropriate photos and videos on his phone. I don't really feel comfortable describing the details. He likes to photograph a certain type of women. They're all different but have specific features in common. She's actually walked in on him masturbating to these images. Veronica says that she's really embarrassed by his hobby, but shows no sign of stopping. I'm absolutely floored by all of this. My mind couldn't process what she had told me, and honestly, I'm about to puke writing and thinking about this. I had no qualms with Danny before this. He's a big, boisterous guy, young, so he's sort of annoying, but it's not like we're really friends. This moment changed that immediately, and I then thought back on all of the red flags that I could have missed. Veronica is visibly on the brink of crying now. I'm condensing my response here. Danny is a creep, and this is not normal behavior. I feel tremendously guilty. Can Veronica even report him for this? Can I report him even if I haven't seen the photos? Veronica is still dating Danny, so I really doubt she would want to. I don't believe that she made this up though because of how upset this made her. She even told her dad about it, who also said that it was messed up. I mean, it bothered her enough to tell me, who's no more than an acquaintance to her. I decided to tell Julia all about this after a really long day of waiting for them to get home from work, and Julia got physically ill when I told them about Danny. I'm fairly certain that learning this information has really impacted Julia's decision of not renewing a lease with Danny. I really do want to visit Julia in December, but I don't want to see Danny ever again. I feel absolutely disgusted and so uncomfortable. I feel so terrible for all of those people in the photos and videos. Danny is a seriously disgusting person. I just started my freshman year of college. I'm going to a college out of my home state, and no one I know is going to the same university as me, which means that I'm going to be rooming with a total stranger. Pretty normal, right? Well, that's what I thought. When I met my roommate, who I'm going to be referring to as DJ, she seemed nice enough. Her parents seemed nice enough too. Everything was going fine for the first couple of weeks, but then DJ's odd habits began emerging. I noticed that every time I would sit at my desk, she would always move from wherever she was to sit on the floor right behind me. And I mean every time. The first few times I thought it was just coincidental because it happened when she would be entering the room from her last classes. I thought that maybe she just wanted to relax by sitting on the floor. Weird, yes, but plausible. But no. Then the other scenarios began happening. She has a beanbag set right by next to me, so close that it's touching me, and this is her favorite spot that she always sits there to do her homework and whatnot. If I decide I want to sit at my desk, she'll actually move from the beanbag and then the floor behind me. Sometimes she doesn't even do anything, she'll just sit there. She abandons her homework to sit behind me. I don't really sit at my desk too often anymore because of this very reason. DJ also has a job that she has to get to by 8 a.m. every week, which means that I typically get woken up very early. I usually just roll over and try to get some extra sleep. A couple of times now though, I've actually woken up to DJ staring at me. One time she was about a foot away from the bed and just staring. She also makes a point to look at me whenever she leaves. But it doesn't end there. I'm utterly disgusted by hair, right? Like it actually makes me sick to my stomach whenever I see hair all over the floor. Well, DJ has this really long curly red hair, which is fine, only she sheds so much hair that I've seen her actually sit there and pull her hair out. Okay, whatever. But one day I decided that I wanted to wash my sheets. I don't even sleep with my sheets. I'll typically only sleep with a throw blanket or only my comforter. I really never go under my sheets, but I do lay on top of them, so they still deserve to be washed. When I pulled back the sheet, I was then met with strings of DJ's long curly hair. I nearly threw up over it. I have no idea how it got there, and I'm not really sure I want to know. But hold on, it gets better. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, DJ and I share the same class together. Whenever class ends, she sits there and waits for me to pack up my notebooks and things, and then we walk back to our room together. Only, here's what's strange. She never tries to talk to me. She usually just walks like about 2 feet right behind me. By itself, that probably seems kind of normal, but with everything else, it just sort of feels like she's watching me. Perhaps not the creepiest story out there, but still very unnerving for me personally. This occurred over the last couple of days, as I moved in with a friend on Christmas Eve, and the other temporary housemate went from pleasant old man stoner to actually drugging my friend and attempting to drug me. I'm a female. The friend and I both are in our mid-20s, and the temporary housemate is in his 60s. So due to my own circumstances, I needed a new place to stay, and a friend Jimmy needed a reliable housemate to replace the old one who had left a few weeks before. I got approval from the real estate agent and shortly moved in with all of my belongings. The old housemate had invited a couple of his own friends who were right out of prison, one of which who had been turned out 2 days before Christmas for painting the bathroom wall with feces while drunk and high, and the other who seemed like a perfectly normal old man who just enjoyed the odd drink and a little bit of weed. The housemate is known as Bible Man, as he was also a recent convert to Christianity, and apparently he believes the rapture is going to happen sometime in 2020. So after a really fun Christmas and Boxing Day with the family, I returned home to hang out with Jimmy. We were looking at memes when Bible Man then barges into the room. He has no concept of boundaries, and he's been doing this for the 2 nights that I'd already spent there. Bible Man both looked and acted pretty wasted. He also seemed high, but claimed that he had only had 2 beers. He also didn't have any money to even buy those beers. He called out to Jimmy and he told him to come with him to the kitchen. Jimmy complied, and Bibleman insisted that he drink some whiskey from a glass. Jimmy tried to refuse but just gave in and gave it a drink. Bibleman then came and tried to offer me a joint, which I absolutely refused, but he rolled anyway. Jimmy came back into the room and we looked at more of the memes for a while. Then Bibleman came back and tried to call Jimmy out to fix something. We tried to ask what it was that was broken, but he refused to say what it was. Jimmy left to go check it out, and Bibleman came back into the room and then tried to push the joint right into my hand. He forced himself into my personal space and whispered into my ear to hide it from Jimmy, then left. There was nothing to fix. After a couple of hours, Jimmy started to feel really tingly and sleepy. He went to go lay down, and Bibleman jumped at the chance to be alone in the room with me. He starts going on about how he knows Jimmy has hepatitis and that I shouldn't sleep with him, and also how he was sinning and bumming with the other temporary housemaid who painted the walls, and a lot of other nonsense that was really hardly understandable. Over the next couple of hours, Bibleman would check on Jimmy, which was not normal behavior, while also turning the stereo up as high as it went, telling me how I forget how beautiful I am and trying to convince me to smoke the joint that he had made. I eventually went to Jimmy's room to ask him for some help to try and get Bibleman to leave me alone. Jimmy had to ask me to turn out his lights as he couldn't get up and he looked very tired and confused. At one point, Bibleman began to rant about Christmas Eve, saying that Jimmy had shut all of the doors and declaring that he was going to screw me. Also how I shouldn't be friends with Jimmy and I should be afraid to sleep at night. The look on his face when he said it actually made me afraid to sleep that night. But not afraid of Jimmy, afraid of Bibleman. He also got into my personal bubble multiple times and accidentally touches my breasts. Keyword accidentally. I eventually convinced him to leave me alone and then pushed the boxes in front of my door. I still wasn't able to sleep for hours that night. As he never went out to smoke, I'm absolutely convinced that he had spiked a joint or had some other kind of ill intent. The way that he pushed and begged me to smoke, it was just way too creepy, and I don't do any kind of drugs, so it's not like it was a normal thing that he knew I did or something. The next morning, Jimmy had told me that he had a really patchy memory of the whole afternoon and evening, even though what Bibleman had given him was the only thing he had drunk all day. We were both really uncomfortable and really upset at his behavior. After talking about it, we realized that he was far too drunk to only have had 2 beers, and we were thinking that he had shoplifted from the bottle shop. But then the dread hit me. I looked into the container where we put our rent money. There was $50 from the rent that was missing, and only I and Jimmy had put our rent in. So angry and really upset, we decided to get Jimmy's scary-looking dad to come on over and convince Bibleman that it was time for him to leave. He came back later in the evening, and we still had to use the threat of calling Jimmy's dad to convince him to take his stuff and get out of there. I feel really bad about turfing him out at night, but it's summer in Australia, so he'll be fine. After talking with some people in the bottle shop and a taxi driver and security guard who all knew him, apparently he had been caught stealing the last few days and he was actually in prison for a pretty good reason. So to Bibleman, the really sketchy housemate that drugged my friend and tried to drug me. Hopefully we don't have to see you ever again.